Thank you for coming out on this cold and windy night, and really for our third event in 2 weeks, which is quite a lot. The purpose of this series is to hopefully bring us all into a conversation between the communities that roughly identify as modern Orthodox in both America and Israel. And one of the things that I found myself professionally is that we really just don't know enough about each other. So, for example, when I believe it was probably about 6 months ago, when I got an email announcing, right, somebody sent me, I think, the announcement in Aryeh of Beit Hillel. I was saying like, oh wow, great name. But I really had no idea what was going on in Israel, and really what Beit Hillel has accomplished just by its existence is really quite remarkable, of creating a community of I won't say Rabbanim for a reason that's clear in a moment, a community of serious halachic thinkers who are dedicated to producing psak that is genuinely mitnodei, that genuinely considers the entirety of the Jewish people as its constituency, and not just those who are formally committed to their authority, and that takes into account Torah in the context of a living society and in the context of everything else you can bring to bear on it. That's an amazing accomplishment to bring a group together that explicitly identifies itself that way. And secondly, I think really in a way that I have not seen elsewhere, they have made it seem a matter of course that for matters of public halakha to be decided, both women and men need to be included, so long as they have adequate scholarship to be legitimately included in the task. And they did it without having to address any of the political, terminological issues that have bogged people down in America in the same conversation. And I think that's really quite remarkable, and we should be aware of that going on. So I'm looking forward very much to tonight, to trying to get a sense of where that community is in Israel, what its influence is, what its goals are, and Israel has the issue that we don't have in America, which is that these issues are intimately bound up with the governmental political process, and not just the internal dynamics of the Jewish community per se. Rav Neuwirth himself is well known as a successful and charismatic Rav. We first corresponded, I think, some years ago when you were with Zohar. Right? And I just say it's a skula to come here because the people of Rastav might become chief rabbi, and he was here, and Rav Lippman is in the Knesset now. so we think that we're right. So we think that I don't know what Rav Dickman's ambitions are, but right, so it's been,
I'm happy to remain the rabbi for the American children.
I'm glad to meet him in person. I hope we'll have occasion to speak. But I think that when I was in Israel a month ago, pretty much everyone said that this is a voice in the contemporary Israeli community that you really need to know about in order to understand where the community is, and because there's much to learn in terms of Torah. And so with that, I look forward very much to listening to Rabbi.
Okay, good evening. Thank you, Rabbi Klapper, for the introduction. B'shut Ma'adator, Rabbi Sander. What I wish to try to do tonight, in the presentation, and afterwards I hope we'll have a kind of a discussion, is to try to give you an insight into the transformations in Israeli society today. It will obviously include what Rabbi Klapper said in the introduction, Beit Hillel, what is happening in the society today, religious, non-religious communities, and I think all this together was reflected in the results of the elections, in the way I'll try to analyze them towards the ends of my presentation. And I want to begin with a comment. There's a Gemara in Masechet Shabbat. The Gemara says as follows: there are things that a man will be asked in heaven when after 120 comes to heaven, like Kavate Eitim La Torah, designated, did you set times for Torah, for learning Torah? Nasata Natata Be'unah, did you deal faithfully? And one of the things that the person will be asked after 120 is Tzipita Liyeshua. Did you long for salvation? It's quite strange because all the rest of the things there are things that the person can quantify, can measure, like Kabbat Eitim La Torah. It's something person can measure. We know how much free time we have. What do we do in our free time? Do we learn Torah? Do we waste of time? Do we do tzedakah? There are many ways to measure where a person is in order to prepare ourselves to stand in front of Hashem and tell Him we did the job. What is the meaning of Tzipita Lishadid, long for salvation? Is there anyone in the world that is not longing for salvation? How do we translate this longing for salvation? By singing twice a day, Mashiach, Mashiach? What is the meaning of the long for salvation? So there's an interesting Rav Kook, and Rav Kook says the following. Tzipita, if you long, comes in Hebrew, the root of tzipita is tzofeh, an observer. Or in other words, Rav Kook compares it to a soldier in the intelligence forces. That he has a double role. On one end, to be passive, to watch, to see. But when he identifies something, he must act. It's an active role of an observer. Not just to see, not just to watch, not just to observe. But when you identify and recognize something, you need to do. You need to take an action. You need to take an initiative. In a sense, I think this is exactly what we see in the Israeli society today. Things which we haven't seen ever since the establishment of the state. I'll start with a personal story. I have many of them, but don't worry, it's not a story night. But just one story. About almost 9 years ago, I was on Shlichut. I was here not far in Teaneck, the Rav native in North America. And I got a call from a former community member, Petach Tikva. I was the Rav of their community before we came on Shlichut. And he asks me the following question. I have a very good friend, business world, and I wanted to invite him for a Shabbos meal. But I know he is not living close by, and it's clear to me that he will drive on Shabbat. What can I do? So I asked him, what's your intention? Do you want to invite him for business purposes? So he told me, no, I wanted to show him Shabbat. We spoke about Shabbat. He's completely disconnected, and I wanted to show him what is Shabbat. I said, okay, that's the goal. It's fine. Should give him an invitation to come for Shabbat, and then if he leaves, if he leaves before the end of Shabbat and he drives on Shabbat, it's not your responsibility. But to make a long story short. Anyways, I did not hear a thing ever since. 5 years later, I was invited to speak. There was somebody approached me, told me there's a big evening of business people in Kfar Saba, and they wanted to have some short Dvar Torah in the beginning for Yom Yerushalayim. They wanted to get something about Yerushalayim, and the host invited you. He wanted you to come. Okay, fine. I went there. It was a big gathering. I gave my speech at the beginning. Stayed for the entire evening. It was fascinating. Anyways, towards the end of the evening, I spoke with the host, and he tells me the following story. You know, I was completely disconnected, secular from the kibbutzim. I ate everything you can imagine. I was the one who, in the army, I convinced all the religious soldiers to leave their religion. Because of me, many of them just gave up on their religion. That was me. I had nothing to do with this. But then he tells me, about 5 years ago, a friend of mine invited me for, the rest is history. I guess you understand where is it going. Anyways, we became best friends ever since. And this guy, in where he lives, I'll give you a few stories. After a few facts, after 70 years, he was able to they were selling pork in the grocery store. It's a kind of, within Farsab, but there are some moshavim, so it's a moshav. They were selling pork for 70 years. He was able to convince them to remove. First time in history, he brought in 2 Sefer Torah. He's holding a minyan there every Shabbat, 100 people. All of them are non-religious. All of them are non-religious, but they come to daven every single Shabbat. He organized just before Yom Kippur a night for spiritual awakening with songs in the Torah for 700 people. All of them are non-dati. Again, just a few facts. There's much more to say. He does not wear a kippah. It's not that he's still driving on Shabbat, but he says, I'm one of the leaders of the new generation of the transparent kippot. There's something new happening in Israel. There's a new Israel. Even in the past, there was a divide between the communities. There's something is changing. You know what, I'll share with you another short idea. We are now Pesach is approaching. And there's a very interesting Zohar that, in a sense, I think is giving us the pattern of processes of development in the world. The Zohar is asking a very interesting question. We begin in Pesach. We begin with the Seder in the 7 days of Pesach. And in order to be ready for this experience of Pesach, we need to get rid of each and every crumb of chametz. Everything must be clean because chametz symbolizes something which is tameh, something which is impure, and therefore we need to completely remove and get rid of the chametz. Fine. Then we are counting Sfirat Omer, 49 days, and we're supposed to reach the highest level, the pinnacle. And what happens then? Well, in our times, maybe we cannot see it, but in the times of Bet Mikdash, there was a special offering that was given on Shavuot. Which offering? The Shtei Alechem. And it has to be made of chametz. That's the only offering, the only public offering that is made of chametz. Says the Zohar, how come? We reach a pinnacle and now we bring chametz to the Mizbeach. So it gives a mashal. A child who got ill, and during the illness, the doctors told his parents, should give him only healthy food. Don't give him any snacks, anything. After he recovered, then the doctors told his father, now you can give him everything you want because he's healthy. Says the Zohar, this is exactly the process of reaching the perfection. We begin the process with separation. First of all, we need to find the holiness, and we need to make some distinction to remove and to separate between the chametz and the matzah. But in truth, when you reach a pinnacle, even the chametz wishes to be sanctified. The chametz wants to be included. This is what we see in the Israeli society today. After many years of divisiveness and separation and fights and arguments between religious, non-religious people, something new is beginning. You know, for many years, ever since I remember myself voting, which is many years ago, the parties that carried anti-religious agenda had altogether at least 20 mandates. Meretz and Shinui and Tom Lapid, many formats. It's fascinating because today, even a party that in the past was considered anti-religious like Meretz is not anti-religious anymore. It wasn't at the agenda of any party at all, because this anti has gone, has vanished. The Israeli society is looking for Jewish identity, for tradition, for togetherness. You see it all over the place. It beginning from the grassroots. Did you hear did you have the chance to see the opening speech of Ruth Calderon?
Yeah.
Okay, everybody heard about the speech. It says it all. Chilonim, non-religious people that never had a chance to learn Torah, they said, they keep saying we want to claim the Torah back to ourselves. It's not just the heritage of the Datiim. It belongs to all of us. It's not a movement that is beginning from the Orthodoxy. It's a movement that is beginning from the bottom. People that had nothing, they're craving for spirituality, for Judaism. You see it in many kibbutzim up north. Completely Chilonim kibbutzim, they start every Shabbat, they have services, Kabbalat Shabbat, that they initiated. Is it halachic? No. But it came from their decision. In Tel Aviv, especially in the summer, you have mass Kabbalat Shabbat. 700-800 people coming every Friday night for festive Kabbalat Shabbat with the instruments. Is it halachic? Obviously not. But again, these people, we're not talking about people that were Orthodox and then decided to do this. We're talking about people that had nothing and now they're looking for something to hold on. You see it with the celebs that many times they are reflecting what is cool, what the trend. Many of them are either Baalei Tshuva or speak about their tradition and their faith and how they observe Shabbat. And you can see it in many levels. The story that I gave about this guy, Ron Rolls is his name, it's a story of the Israeli society today that is looking for this togetherness. I'll go back to the election in a second, but I want to refer also to Bet Hillel. The reason why we decided to establish Bet Hillel a little bit more than a year ago was exactly because of that reason. We identified, even before we had the clear indications as we can see today from the elections, and I'll explain why. These trends, these transformations, the Israeli society today is different. But the huge problem was that at the very same time, many of the religious leaders and rabbis, instead of realizing the greatness of the moment and working on building bridges, they were focused on building taller walls. Because of many reasons. Sometimes might be justified. I'm not judging or criticizing, but that was the reality. And I'm sure you're aware of many things that took place in the past 2-3 years. Women exclusion and segregation and stories of order refusal in the army because of women singing and different letters of Rabbanim, either Rabbanim that supported Katzab, the president, against the Supreme Court, or against renting apartment to non-Jews, and every single day there was something else. And the huge gap between what is happening inside the society and the poor image of Judaism in the public sphere brought us to realize, again, as I said at the beginning, tzipita lishua, that something needs to be done. We need to bring back the voice of the embracing Judaism that will build bridges, that will connect, that will be part of this process that is coming again from the bottom, from the grassroots. It's not about the establishment, it's not about the political systems, it's coming from the people. The social protest that took place 2 summers ago, it brought out about 500,000 of people that claimed we want tzedek חברתי, social justice. Again, it's coming from the bottom. People, there's a special awakening in Israel. And therefore we decided we must do something. belong to the same trend, process, transformation. I will not give you an entire spiel about Bet Hillel because that I can speak for an hour, but that's not the intention. I want also to have a discussion. But just a few highlights. One of the ways in which we are trying to have an impact on the public discourse is by giving this Piskei Halacha. The idea is very simple. Like today, if I'm trying to give a, I would say, even superficial analysis of the structure of the Israeli society, not all of it, but part of it, let's take the religious Zionist camp. Religious Zionist camp is split up to more or less 70-30. The 30 is what we call in Hebrew the Chadal, Charedim Leumim, right wing. Obviously there are different streams, but in general. And the 70%, the silent majority, are what we would define as modern orthodoxy. But again, they're different, more liberal, more conservative, but that's more or less. However, so that's one about the religious Zionist camp. When I speak about the general sector, about the Chiloni or whatever, name them whatever. So today, and it's proven in surveys, 80% believe in God and search for Jewish identity. That 20% that no matter what you will say, they couldn't care less. 80% are looking for Judaism. So we have today, again, within the religious sector, 70%, the non-religious, 80%. The majority of the society is craving for a different voice of Judaism. But unfortunately, the people that took over the public discourse came from the more, I would say, a right-wing part, the Haredi Leumi, which again, I don't have anything against them. They're great Talmidei Chachamim, great people with good intention. But for the majority of the society, this is not what they need. And this is just pushing them away, unfortunately. Therefore, there's a need to bring back this voice of the moderate Judaism, embracing Judaism, to the center of the public discourse. That this will be what people will talk about. So we have this Beit Midrash for Halacha. This is one of the ways in which we are trying to impact and to create a different image for Judaism in public sphere. It's a fascinating process, by the way. We put together Talmidei Chachamim and also scholarly women, as Rabbi Klapper mentioned before. People that has years of Psikat Halacha behind them. And they take different dilemmas and sugyot, learn them together, try to identify and recognize most significant elements. And then we start a process of about 2 months of putting together the tshuva. Lots of back and forth. It takes, by the way, tremendous patience, flexibility. People that want things to be exactly their way will never be able to find their place in such an organization. Because you need to realize that the greater goal is more important than your personal opinion. So every opinion is taken in account. At the end of the day, we're trying to put everything together and create a fascinating system of checks and balances of, by nature, some people are more liberal, some people are more conservative. Altogether, you have a psak, but when this psak comes out, it's not a psak of one single Rav. Because if it's a psak of one single Rav, so there's another Rav that will obviously say the opposite. It comes on behalf of 170 people. And that creates a buzz, public buzz. I'll give you like two psakim that we I'm sure some of you at least have heard about them. Created a discussion of hundreds of thousands of people across the world, not just in Israel, by the way. And this is the numbers I'm giving you are measured by social networks and other ways. the first psak that we gave a few months ago was about encouraging people to be hosted by non-Shomer Kashrut people for unity purposes, meaning we said in the psak that unity and togetherness is a spiritual value. And therefore, we encourage people to have friendships with non-religious people, but you can just invite them. You cannot. Sometimes they invite you, and you cannot insult them. So there's a way in which you can be invited without obviously breaking the halacha or giving up on your standards. But we give some guidelines of what one can eat, what one cannot eat, and how to manage. Obviously, it's applicable to Israel because most of the food is kosher in Israel. In Chutz La'aretz, it's more complicated. But it appears, by the way, if you want to read the full psak, it's here. I brought some booklets, you can see it afterwards. It was amazing. We didn't even realize what impact it will have. But once you work with the media and with everything together, everybody spoke on this psak. I'm not speaking about datim, but chilonim. No, last week we had a meeting with within the leadership of Bet Hillel. We have lay leaders, not just the team. Some of them are non-religious. And one of them told us last week, I don't need halacha. I don't follow any psak halacha. But I'm so happy that you are publishing these psakim, because when I'm hearing these psakim that speak about togetherness, I feel that there's a Judaism that relates to me. And this is why these psakim are important. Again, another psak, which again, it's not a big deal. I'm sure this is something that is, I know that for sure that this is something that has been practiced in America for many years and other places. About inviting, the same story I said before, inviting somebody for Shabbat meal. Again, it created such a buzz. I was interviewed in a TV show, one of the major TV shows, and newspapers, Hebrew, English, Jerusalem Post, all over the world, people spoke about this psak. Today, I don't know if you've seen, there was another psak was published in Israel Hayom newspaper, also in English, about about a position paper of women and community. There's a way people in the Israeli society are looking and waiting to hear a different voice of Judaism. Everything I'm telling you all comes together, I believe, to the results of the elections. That what we felt that is happening was reflected clearly in the results. The two parties that were the stars of the election system were Yesh Atid and Bennett and the Beit Yehudi. It's interesting because the Beit Yehudi, it's a religious party. They received 12 mandates. The maximum potential of the religious Zionist sector is maybe 7, 8 mandates. And we know that some of them went to other parties. So probably only 6 went from the religious Zionist camp. Where all the rest came from? From non-religious people. And why did they vote to the Beit Yehudi? Because they gave the message of values, Jewish identity and togetherness. When Bennett and Ayelet Shaked was Chiloni, non-religious, the first time in a so-called religious party running together, this is a message that people got. And the competing party was Yesh Atid. And Yesh Atid came with exactly the same flag. Obviously, there are differences between their opinions about the land of Israel, settlements, right-wing, left-wing. But you know, that's not the issue today in this society. The issue is a social, spiritual issue. And Yesh Atid came with the same flag. There's Yair Lapid, who is exactly the opposite of his father, was against Judaism, is in favor of Judaism. And you can see it from every single member of his party, religious and non-religious people, Rav Ronen and others. There was never ever a Knesset with so many religious Knesset members and so many opening speeches which were Divrei Torah, not just by the religious Knesset members. It is the same thing. Because you have Yair Lapid and Rav Sharon and Rabbi Dietman and Ruth Kador, all these people together bring the togetherness. The social values, social justice, and even more so, the Shivyon Banetel, meaning the drafting of the Haredim. And you know what? The Haredim are not against. Mm-hmm. The Haredi community is not against, and I want to explain. The leaders are definitely against, because they will lose their political power. But the grassroots, the people, they want to get out of this vicious cycle of poverty. They want to go to the army, they want to go to war. And in the army today, you have special units in which the Haredi soldiers can serve without sacrificing a thing, an inch in their religion. They want so badly to go, but they need someone to force them to go, because they cannot go against the Gedolim that are telling them no. So in a sense, what is happening, also this is serving the Haredi community. It's all over the society in Israel. Something is beginning from the bottom. And the fact that Bennett and Lapid joined together against Netanyahu, this is the new Israel, Datim, Chilonim, togetherness, Jewish identity, values. That's what they tell Bibi. We don't want files. Let's speak about values. Let's speak about the agenda before we speak about the files. Who's getting which minister? That's not the issue. It's a new politics. I think they're teaching Bibi a message which you might pay a big price in the future for this message. But again, without getting into politics, these results are reflecting these transformations in the society in Israel. It's all bringing us to realize where's the mainstream. And the mainstream is in that point of the Jewish identity. There's Rav Kook. With this Rav Kook, I'll at least finish this part of the presentation. He wrote this passage about, I think, 100 years ago. It's obviously on the Midrashim. And he says the following. Mikubaliman, we have the tradition that in the future there will be a rebellion in the state of Israel, in the land of Israel. A physical tranquility that people will reach and enjoy will bring them to a point that people will lose their values and depth, whatever. It says for Kook Teal, there'll be a storm, and a spiritual awakening will occur, and people will start seeking for the light of God. 10 years ago, no, maybe even 5 years ago, we're at the previous stage of the rebellion, of emptiness. So at least in a significant part of the Israeli society, completely detached. But now something new is beginning. And we need to realize what is happening today in the state of Israel. As we said at the beginning, Tzipita Yeshua. There's a spiritual awakening. There's something that again is beginning from the bottom, from the grassroots. And it is bringing us, that's what I believe, to a much better place. If everything will happen together, if Rav Stav, please God, will take over the chief rabbinate, and all this partnership between Bennett and Lapid will have an impact on the forming government, which will work to solve all these social issues. and with what we do in Bet Hillel, about the social, spiritual issues, working with the public, all this together, it's part of entire change that our society is going through, which is bringing us definitely one step further towards redemption. So these are some few words and reflections and insights into what's happening today, but obviously I would be happy to answer and open discussion or whatever.
I just want to thank you for coming. I'm so sorry that the room is not packed because I was reluctant to come out myself. It's not a great night, but your words are so inspiring and so encouraging. It's just a delight having you. And I remember last year we were treated to a talk by Rabbi Dov Littman, who was just elected to the Senate, to the Knesset.
Yeah.
And you and he share many commonalities, a very positive, constructive look at the unity of Judaism. And it's just very uplifting. And I thank you for coming tonight. It's just our split to be here.
Thank you. By the way, I mentioned to the rabbi that Rabbi Dov Lippman was in my shul last week.
Is that right? He was
also,
he was very impressive.
Everything is
Very impressive. I'm glad to see him in the Knesset.
yeah, very very positive.
Mhm.
I'm just curious, what do you think? I mean, this is great. I mean, it's a heartwarming message, and but like, how are we going to screw it up? You know? I mean, so whatever. But really, seriously, I'm curious, like, what you see as the
What a downer.
yeah, no, the causative. What's going on sociologically? I mean, of course, Hashem's hand is in everything, but what would you say is what's happening, and why is this happening? And is it that? And I lived in Israel. My family were in Israel last year. Is it that we sort of like Israeli society has tasted almost everything secular society, the world has to offer at this point. And we're finally coming back and realizing we've tasted everything else. You know what? Judaism actually, Yiddishkeit, real Yiddishkeit, or just, Jewish people have something internally to offer ourselves and our kids. And we want that ruchnius. We want a taste of reality, and we can finally appreciate it. Is that what's going on? Is it maybe a sense that we've gone through maybe the national states in terms of statehood, and we've had the struggles and the wars, and now we have the ability to look more internally, and that
I think it's a combination. First of all, we live in a postmodern world that, by definition, it's a world that is opening everyone to more opportunities. You don't have to stick just to one agenda. You can try another agenda. So in the past, you're either religious or non-religious. Today, again, part of the postmodern world, you can be non-religious, but have Kabbalat Shabbat and come to shul, and there's no contradiction. That's one. Obviously, there's the emptiness. Like in the past, when we were in the survival mode, when we had all the wars, whatever. So, Zionism, being an Israeli, was about serving in the army and saving the society, building the country. Now we have one of the most developed countries in the world. And so, what's next? So there's an emptiness, and that's why people are beginning to search for Jewish identity. And thirdly, is it's a new generation. The previous generation, they had the rebellion. They knew what religion was. They knew what they are fighting against, because they fought against the old format of Judaism, because that's something that rejected them. The new generation, they're completely ignorant. They don't have any clue about Judaism. And therefore they have the curiosity, because they don't have the anti, because they don't know what to be against. That's what, I'm going back to the picture of Ruth Calderon, that's exactly what she said. One day I found my love, this book of Torah. It was taken from me. So I think all these things together, and obviously the hand of Hashem is part of the, that's what I believe, part of the redemption process, which is, as we see in the prophecies of Yechezkel, even the prophecy of the Torah, there are two stages, the physical stage and the spiritual stage, building the state and then building the spirit. And now we're in the beginning of the second stage. How many years it will happen? 50 years, 100 years, 200 years. I'm not a prophet. But it's definitely there. And that's the tzipita lishma that I began with.
Two questions I would ask. One is that you talk often of restoring the voice of inclusive Judaism, which I assume means going back to the Rabbanut of before the takeover, so to speak, and harking back to the days of whether you go back to Rav Kook or Rav Unterman or Rav Avadia pre-Shas, whichever model you're in. So I'm interested in why you think that model didn't succeed in the past. Right? Why is it that the inclusive Judaism of the past left you with a circumstance in which people felt totally cut off, and why it will change now if the same voice is being recreated?
By nature, every establishment is exposed to politics, and once politics comes in, it ruins the establishment. And this is what happened with the chief rabbinate. At the beginning, it was like a movement, spiritual movement, as you say, inclusiveness of Kook, of Herzog. But it became very political. Today, like for Rav Stav to be elected, know how much politics does it take? Unbelievable. It was for Stav himself, it was a very difficult move to do, because he had to get into all this dirt of the political game. That is a problem. By the way, I'm not sure, even if Rav Stav will win, which would be great, whether he would be able to change the system from bottom up. I'm not sure. But everything I described comes from the field, from the surface, from the grassroots. And this is what is very interesting, because the change is not beginning from the top, but from the bottom. And even the partnership between Bennett and Lapid is trying to bring new politics to Israel. And this is the lesson they're trying to teach Bibi. Because Bibi was trying with his old tricks to bring in Shas and Tzipi Livni, and he gave them the candies, and they got in without giving up on their ideology. But there are two parties that are telling him, we don't want the candies, we want the ideology. It's a new politics that is coming from the bottom, like these two movements. And it's all part of a whole change that is happening now. So I believe personally, even though we need to try to reoccupy the establishment, the religious establishment, this will definitely improve things. But in the end of the day, the revolution will start from the bottom.
You know, for me, it's kind of interesting that this is happening just seemingly in the last few years, because sort of visiting Israel over a period of however many decades, I remember going and getting this, on one hand, the sense of division, like, oh, there's religious people, non-religious. But two things. One, and a sense of paradox, because on one hand, there would be non-religious people who complain about other religious this and religious that. I said, fine, then why don't you make your own Beit Knesset? And you could do whatever you want. Oh, I can't do that. Well, why not? Okay. But then, on the other hand, I would meet people who would say, well, I'm not that to you, but sure, we make Kiddush Friday night, and we do this, and we do that. It's like you were saying, oh, these non-religious people, they have, Kabbalah Shabbat. Well, they're not totally not religious in certain...
That's a transparent kippah.
Right, well, yeah, I mean, they don't observe the halacha, right? So it seems that on one hand that maybe those paradoxes are being resolved, but one thing I do find interesting is that the way I thought, if I would have thought that what would happen is that these non-Dati people would be joining or establishing conservative reform, B'tei Knesset, but they're not doing that. They're doing something different. And I'm curious, why is that? Why is that? They seem to be finding, from what you're describing, they're finding a totally different way of doing it.
That's what I hinted before. Let's not forget that the Orthodox, the conservative and reform movements came from the Orthodoxy. They came from something that they thought is not good enough, it's not what people need, and therefore they decided to make some changes, or to make lots of changes. It depends on Here, this is something that it's coming from exactly the opposite direction, from people that had nothing, and they're trying to find their way. And that's why they're trying to find creative ways to get connected to Judaism, to Jewishness, to God. So there's no, in the end of the day, they don't need another movement. It's something which is developing. And by the way, that is why it is so crucial, especially at this time. The orthodoxy will show the face, as Betty is trying to show, of the smiling, embracing, inclusive orthodoxy. Because otherwise, as you said, today they are not looking for any alternative because it's hardly existing in Israel. Because in truth, they can find everything they want in orthodoxy. But the question is, where will we be? Will we realize the greatness of the moment, or will we continue with the extremism and with building Torah walls? That's a challenge of our time.
Well, but that's where the Haredi stand. Even though you say that in the grassroots they would like to have it different, the leadership is entrenched and self-sustaining, and the Haredi, who I understand are about 10% of the population now, have about 20 children per family. I don't know, 10,
Feels like it.
Maybe not an average.
and everyone else has 2 children.
14.3.
I'm thinking that in a few generations, Israel will be all Haredi.
I have a question.
Who's gonna-
How much time do you think this will be able to continue? They would be able to stay in this cycle of poverty. It's chaval for them. They need to go to work. They need to like Haredim in America. Most of them go to work. I guess you've been to B&H.
They seem to have a death wish. They seem to have a death wish.
But economics are going to force the issue, is what you're saying.
There's no other way. There's no other way. They'll definitely go out, and what is happening now, and people truly want it. And today, and more than in the past, there is the opportunity to serve in the army. There are many working places, there are universities for Haredim. There are working places where there are many Haredim. But, and again, it's not that one day we'll draft all them to the army. It's a process. It has to be done with agreement together. But again, they want it. The problem is politics. As I said before, but this will happen. It will definitely happen this way or another. There's no other way. And this time, the way it seems, the Haredim will not be part of the coalition, which will, in a sense, maybe help this to overcome the old politics.
Well, if they can't get the candy, then they'll have to get the jobs, right? I mean, it's gonna force the along with the army, the ability not to get the entitlements, right? To have the entitlements. And just one other quick thing, you mentioned before, the social protests over the summer last year. I'm sorry, how are you connecting that exactly to? Are you saying that at its base there's a stirring for change and a yearning for something better?
Yeah.
Is that what
obviously, there was lots of politics involved. That's, by the way, what killed the protest, when people made it political.
Mm-hmm.
But the only way to bring out such a large amount of people is if there's an awakening. People demanded social justice. Like it was, for me, I saw the prophecies of the Nevi'im. This will be the redemption when we'll call for justice. This is what we dreamt about. All of a sudden,
really,
you see people, simple people, walking out of their comfort zone and going to the streets and demanding tzedek chavati, social justice. Isn't that spiritual?
but really, wasn't it an economic issue that started it? The housing market in Tel Aviv,
right.
and the cottage, and wasn't it really
It was
based on economic inequality?
Obviously, it was an economical issue, which is also part of this. But again, people didn't go out and ask, we want bread. The claim was we want tzedek chavati, we want social justice, because what really, people in Israel are living good, Baruch Hashem. majority. It's not Israel of 20 years ago. People are living good in most of the country. However, the problem is that you have some families who are controlling the Israeli market. All the tycoons, and this is what really troubles people. That we have such huge gap between people working so hard for the living, and Russian, they're living good. They go abroad, they fly. People didn't ask for bread. They asked for equality. This is missing. And it came, again, the call was for social justice, not for bread. So obviously there's an economical element, but it's not just economical. It's part of this awakening.
Maybe closing of the gap, the issue of a winnowing middle class, and it's an issue.
Sounds familiar.
So it's closing of the gap in terms of economics, and maybe the parallel is closing the gap spiritually too.
Yeah, that's the chametz and matzah that you mentioned before. That they need to get together. Yes, Rabbi.
Say a little bit about Beit Hillel and the sort of the methodology of Psak Halacha. Is it just Aryeh Rabin Latot, or is the discussion process? Is there everyone has the same voice? I mean, and how would you compare this to other halachic decision-making processes of Rabbanim, Rabbanut?
Okay, so I'll give a little bit more about this. There's something very interesting happening in our times. Again, like many other things we mentioned before. In the past, the system of Sikat Halacha was very simple and clear. You had the Gdolim in every generation, that they had the courage, they had the knowledge, the credibility, the tools to identify and to deal with the new challenges of each and every generation, and to give psakim that are based on the tradition of halacha, yet realizing the new times. And that's the way chain of halacha kept going. However, in our times, it's way more challenging because the changes in the society are so rapid. Every 5 years, you have new generation, you have new language. Social networks, smartphones, Twitter, Facebook, it's a different language, which we did not have 5 years ago. Who knows what will happen 5 years from today? It will definitely be different. The changes are so rapid that it's hard to catch up. And the gap between the Gdolim, the authorities of halacha, and the society are becoming almost unbridgeable. At the same time, if in the past the Gdolim had the advantage of knowledge, today with the knowledge information in the internet, you can, on every question, you can ask Rabbi Google, and you can get all the sources you need.
So
More
maps, books, halacha will be another tab on the.
You can get everything you need. So people, obviously it's a mistake, it's an illusion. But people think, well, why do we need them? Whatever we want to find out, we'll Google, we'll find the answer that is good for us, and therefore there's a huge risk for the future of halacha. The halacha might become irrelevant for the most of people. There'll be a minority that will keep the halacha, but that's the fear. And again, I'm speaking about people that will remain under the framework of religion, but will lose the faith in halacha. What we were trying to create in that system, which, by the way, it's the same system that probably took place about 1800 years ago, when you had the Batim, you had the Bet Hillel and Bet Shammai. You had lots of scholars that were giving psakim together as a group. How does it work? Basically, each one is equal. There's no difference between Rabbi Riskin, I think is the oldest rabbi that we have in the organization, is 72, 73, and the youngest rabbi or Rabbi there in the 30s. Each voice is equal. But what we're trying to do is not to vote, because when you're voting, somebody is losing, and somebody is not included. We're trying to listen, to listen and to debate and to go back and forth. So we begin with a small group. They are the members of the Bet Midrash of the initial discussion, and they do this process amongst themselves at the beginning. It takes, again, at least a month. We hear the different voices. We are trying to take into account each and every voice when we are putting this together, again, with the right system of checks and balances. And it goes back and forth, and each one's changing and commenting. It's an exhausting process, but the product is worth it. Once this is done, the process with the members of Bet Midrash, then we send it to the entire forum of Bet Hillel. We give the people some time to respond, to give their comments. Again, we're trying to take into account most of the comments. So we can take all of them, but each one has the feeling that he was